So we've got family members here. So we've got George Austen, who is Dad, in the middle there, Reverend George Austen, and then to the left, James Austen, who was the eldest in the family. Francis Austen, who was between Cassandra and Jane in age, and then Charles, who in fact was the youngest.
Are these definitely pictures from the Austen family?
Yes, they've come down through the family, and so, and we can trace the provenance, so, you know, authentic pictures.
And why did pictures exist of the men in the family, but not of Jane?
I'm not sure we really know that. I mean, obviously, Charles and Francis had illustrious careers, but yes, it is a bit of a puzzle, really. But then things have appeared or disappeared, you know, through the centuries.
Well, perhaps you could help us with our puzzle. Paula, do you want to?
Yes, I'll show you.
Okay, right.
Drawing on vellum.
Okay.
Of this young lady.
My goodness, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So you can definitely trace a likeness there, can't you? It is quite good, isn't it? That is quite intriguing, I must admit. It's that nose really and the mouth, which I always think of as very distinguishing features of the Austens.
So who's this?
So this is Edward, Lucky Edward, who was the one who was adopted by the rich knight family. I just wondered if I could bring my colleague in, actually, Anne. So, Anne, do you want to...
Anne, can I show you this portrait?
Wow.
And your reaction?
Right, my reaction. Well, it's wonderful. The long neck, which is in the portrait by Cassandra. Yeah. But also that nose and eyebrow plateau is very like. It's familiar.
It's familiar, that's what you're talking.
It's familiar.
Yeah.
It's very familiar. Yes.
Does it matter if we know what she looks like?
For no other reason that every other authoress of before and after has probably got a portrait and Jane hasn't. She is so important. We wouldn't all be reading the books we're reading without this woman. So, any of them. So it would be nice to put the books to the face.
I think I'll have a scone.
Go for it.
Shall I just...
If the woman in the picture does turn out to be Jane Austen, how would that change our view of her? It's quite a severe, strong face, isn't it?
It's exactly the view of Jane Austen that I have, which I think is very different to perhaps the view of cosy, demure, spinster Jane. And just occasionally, yes, she would like to write, she'll write a few things here and there.
As a sideline?
As a sideline, and just to keep the family amused. And when I look at that face, I see that feisty professional woman writer who doesn't write twee little novels. It's a sort of frocks and smocks.
Slightly patronising.
It's very patronising, and it makes me cross, actually, because that is not the Jane Austen that I know and love.
But it was clear to me, looking out from the Cassandra's Cup Cafe in Chawton, that if Paula was ever to upturn the heritage version of Jane Austen, she was going to need a lot more than a hunch about family resemblance. Could we be more objective about any similarities between Paula's portrait and the reliably attested ones of Jane's brothers, Frank, James, Charles, Edward, and her clergyman father George? The recent riots might present a very different vision of life from the one in Austen's novels. But could the techniques used to identify the looters from CCTV footage have a bearing here? David Anley specialises in forensic facial recognition techniques in criminal cases. He agreed to apply those techniques to Paula's picture and to those of the Austen family from Chawton Cottage.
If we were in a court of law, which is your normal job, what would you say in answer to the question, could the woman in the picture be related to the Jane Austen family?
I've cropped all the images of all the subjects and put together an arrangement of the noses here.
Wow.
And you can see that, considering we're looking at 6 different subjects, I would say that the artists have portrayed the noses in a strikingly similar manner.
Looking at the rest of the face, do you see similarities there or differences?
There is a similar broad similarity in, for example, the shape of the eyes.
Oh, gosh.
Overall.
Goodness me.
But it has to be said that Jane's eyes are not symmetrical, which is not really the case with any of the others. I suppose the overall question is there a feature that might be described as a family trait which is in some way striking and shared by all of them? And I think the answer is yes, there is. And the nose is strikingly similar. Nor do I find amongst the other features anything sufficiently varied in its appearance as to suggest the lack of any familial connection.
So, Paula, what do you draw from this?
Well, I think if I were to believe Deirdre LaFay that it's an imaginary portrait, how could somebody have a nose that's like every other member of the family if it was just from the imagination? It strikes me as rather poignant, rather sad that the family didn't think she was sufficiently important enough to merit her own miniature, her own portrait. These were the brothers, they were the important ones.